Oh my goodness, we're live. Welcome anyone who's here. This is our first kind of live that we've tried out at AnimSchool. So I'm going to introduce myself real quick. I am Jesse Draper. I'm AnimSchool instructor. Oh, wow, I'm getting some feedback, so I got to figure out how to do that.
Good
How
luck.
do you mute?
Do I need to mute?
No, I think
no.
So I'm learning about it. So 1 second from here. I probably have to put some earphones in or something.
Are you getting like feedback from the?
I'm getting feedback from my mic, but so I'll let you talk, Scott, while I do that because you're not giving me feedback.
Okay, cool. Hopefully, Jesse stopped me if the chat is saying that I'm giving feedback or recoil. Oh, okay. It's just me now. Well, Jesse dipped out, but welcome everyone. I can't see the live stream. That was on Jesse's end, but I'll just introduce myself while we wait for him to come back. But I'm Scott McWhinney. Currently doing. Welcome back. Thanks for.
Sorry, I realized I had like the YouTube stream open, and so it was playing back like a delay. So
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, great. You're back. Now I don't have to stall.
I know. All right, you're back, Scott. So Scott, introduce yourself officially now.
Yeah. So I'm Scott McWhinney, class 5 instructor. I started off teaching class 5, but for the last couple of years been teaching class 6. But I'm been animating for over 10 years at places like Blue Sky, Illumination, Sony, Disney, and actually most recently switched over to the game world to check out some of that stuff. And I'm over at Epic Games right now, working on some of that new Fortnite stuff that if any of you are Fortnite players, you know that a lot of stuff has just dropped into the ether of that world. So that's basically what I've been doing animation wise, mostly feature, some commercial stuff, and now exploring the world of games and having to animate not to camera now. So that's been fun.
That's awesome. So thank you so much to everyone who submitted a reel. We had a lot of interest. I think we're almost about like mid 40s worth of reels. So we wanted to say thank you. We will not be able to get to everyone's. However, we plan on doing more of these live reel reviews. This is kind of an experiment, a hangout today. So if you have, if you aren't reviewed today, we will like pay attention for next time where we'll give you more preference. So hopefully that can help you out there. So the other thing we're going to start with is just kind of an introduction a little bit to what we're all about. We're AnimSchool. We're an online animation school, and we teach 3D modeling, 3D animation, and also game animation. And Scott, how long have you taught at AnimSchool for? I think you said, but
6 years.
6 years.
5 or 6. Something like that. I'd have to go back and look on LinkedIn or wherever I really wrote it down.
Yeah, and I think which is interesting is I think like years ago, before COVID times, it was like I think a little bit confusing to people about this idea of an online school. The fact that you could learn over Zoom. So we do all of our classes over Zoom. We don't have a physical campus. We're completely remote. We've been remote for like 11 plus years, 12 years. And so we've been doing this a while. And so when COVID happened and a lot of people went remote, we were used to that. So what's also really cool about AnimSchool is that you can take classes from where you're at. So you can be at your house and learn from pro animators. So that's what's so cool about AnimSchool is that our instructors are working professionals like Scott. And I'm a big believer in education in general. I went to a brick and mortar school, and I really loved that experience, and I made a ton of friends. You also went to a brick and mortar school, right, Scott? You went to Ringling.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's tons of benefits to that. I think with any kind of education, there's trade-offs. And one of the trade-offs I was always told, in a way, like to avoid an online school, was that there isn't the like connection or I guess like the networking that you'd have at a traditional school. But as I've been at AnimSchool, I find that completely wrong. Like I have made so many amazing connections and lifelong friends. It's so crazy. Scott, do you have like any opinion about that? Like what's the difference between like an in-person experience? We're not knocking in person, but also like let's talk about the benefits of an online experience.
Yeah, I mean, on that topic, they both have the opportunity to network and meet people. It's just kind of a bit of a different set of skills, which is something I've had to learn coming from the in-person stuff and starting to do AnimSchool and working remotely. But I mean, for example, when I was working on Wish, I had 2 former students that came and worked with me, and they just, hopped right in and found me and started talking to me like they'd known me for years, which in fact they had. They just had known me as this smaller little square. So yeah, like you still, I have students all the time reach out and keep in touch. So it's definitely you can meet people and get to know people and have a network and connections. It's just a little, you're not sitting there by the water cooler chatting it up. You're sending messages and memes to each other through chats.
Yeah, totally. The other thing that's been really cool is there's this great app called Discord, and we have really taken to that as an AnimSchool community. So we actually have like a Discord thread for every class. We have art class Discord threads, and so we're actually really have a vibrant online community, and it's very cool. When in-person events happen, this is where I know it doesn't matter if you're in an in-person school or not. As soon as there's events like Lightbox or CTN, it's kind of like an in-person reunion, and you're like, oh, I've actually never met Scott in person before, but I think, like Scott has like come and talked to my art classes, and like I consider him a good friend, and we're like meme buddies on Instagram. So like even though like it's we haven't evolved enough with the change of technology for me not to know that I haven't met you in person. I know I haven't, but
I forget sometimes, to be honest. When I was just talking, I was saying, wait, I've never met Jesse.
I know, but that's what's crazy is my students and instructors at AnimSchool, like I feel like I met them. So other than just not actually meeting them, that's what's really cool. When you enroll at a class at AnimSchool, you have basically like FaceTime with probably some of your animation and 3D modeling heroes. It's very, very exciting. And I loved my brick and mortar experience, and this is not knocking that at all, but many of my instructors had not worked in industry for over 7 years. And the animation industry particularly changes so fast that you really do want to have that kind of feedback from a working professional. It's hard to quantify how valuable that is. Scott, like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, mine was the same situation. A lot of them, which they're all great, and they taught me many different things. But yeah, a lot of them hadn't worked in a while, and they knew like the essentials, but they weren't quite up to like knowing what the standards are and the expectations. And because it grows and grows. You look at Toy Story, just the animation compared to Toy Story 4, and you're like, this has changed. Like the standards and expectations have changed and grown. So yeah, with brick and mortar, they don't, they have to teach 3, 4, 5 classes sometimes, so they don't have the time to be working. But here, most of us are just doing the one class, and so we, a couple hours a week, and we can keep working and learning and passing that information on. So I'm a little jealous that I didn't get that close of industry experience when I was in school, but I figured it out.
Yeah, we're gonna give like a brief introduction if you haven't. Like, if you can, head on over to I'm gonna put this in the chat in the comments, but if you haven't, you can follow along. I'm just gonna give you a quick rundown of how AnimSchool works. And so kind of our bread and butter is the 3D animation program. And we have it planned out so that it all builds on itself. It isn't. It has kind of an end goal, and the end goal. And this is a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. The end goal is to prepare you for a career in the animation industry, be it video games, feature film, TV, commercial. There's a lot of stuff you can do with animation, and actually, animation is used in all sorts of fields you wouldn't even know. So there's a lot that you can do with the education that we provide. And so what we have here, before you can get into the program courses, we are an accredited school, probably the only fully online accredited online animation school. And so before you can get into the program, we have what are called the prerequisite courses. And so many of you here who are watching, who've submitted reels, maybe have already taken Maya. So when you apply for AnimSchool, you actually apply with a reel, and we have a kind of a small team of animators who basically will place you in this curriculum in the appropriate class. So we have a curriculum kind of committee, and we have a review committee, and we'll put you in the appropriate place. And we've been doing this for a long time, so just trust. Like, I know a lot of people go, oh, I want to jump right into class 5 and do facial performance. But if it's a real disservice to put you in a higher class than maybe you're ready for, because sometimes what we're really lacking is the fundamentals. And Scott, can you maybe speak to this? Because I know this is a really hard thing, especially with some of you guys today. You're posting your reels, and I mean, I'm an artist, and I have the only way you can be an artist is if you believe in yourself. And sometimes as artists, we think we're better than we are. I'm sorry to say that. And so what do you kind of feel about that in terms of like placement and maybe some advice there? If anyone's like, why am I not getting into like class 3 or 4? Why am I being put into class 1 or 2?
Yeah. I mean, from my experience, like when I was at my brick and mortar school, most people did internships after their junior year. I did mine after my sophomore year, in part because I had an instructor who kind of like reached out to Sony ImageWorks and was like, hey, I think this person might, Scott might be good for this internship. And I went in thinking like, yeah, like my stuff's great. I know what I'm doing. Like, this is totally going to be amazing. And then years later, I realized how much of it just kind of wasn't clicking that they were talking about at the internship, and went over my head because I didn't have the base knowledge that was expected of me to be in that internship position. So I really kind of shouldn't have been there quite yet, because I didn't quite know everything. I'd only been animating for like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months in CG. And so, yeah, I just realized I missed out on a lot of stuff just because I wasn't picking up on what they were saying, just because of the lack of experience and the lack of, those prerequisites that I kind of needed mentally about animation to be able to understand what they were talking about. So I kind of felt like it was a missed opportunity. I didn't get everything I needed out of it, because ultimately they needed to be talking about more basic stuff with me. But everyone else at the internship, had plenty of experience, and they didn't need to hear about bouncing balls and, weight shifts.
Yeah, no, totally. And I was also going to say this, Scott, about fundamentals. I think really hard about fundamentals, because I teach digital painting, and there's people who are really great artists, and you always hear, oh, why don't you just go on YouTube? And there's great people who learn on YouTube and do all sorts of stuff. But where like AnimSchool is such an awesome place is, that you're learning the right stuff. Like, I can go on YouTube and say, I want to become an animator. How do I know that what I'm looking at is the right stuff? That is really maybe the difference between AnimSchool and maybe just going on YouTube and watching videos, is you can learn from an industry pro that is going to teach you the stuff that you actually need to know, and make sure that you're getting the actual fundamentals of animation. There's great stuff, like I said, on YouTube, but how do you curate that experience? That's kind of what I think about when I think of AnimSchool. Is I trust AnimSchool based on the reels that I see coming out of AnimSchool, so I know they're teaching the right stuff. It's kind of like the proof is in the pudding. Like, what do you think about that in terms of like fundamentals? Because you can 100% learn animation on your own. I'm not going to say you can't.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends that have learned it on their own, and you know, a lot of what I learned was on my own. But I think kind of the nice thing is that, at least what I feel when I'm going through my classes, you know, people ask questions and I can kind of go over and get past this, all the stuff that I learned or thought I needed to learn that actually wasn't correct. You know, like in my polish class, I talk about all this extra polish that I used to do. And then it took me years to realize that's not needed. It doesn't do anything. It's a waste of time. So it kind of helps with all the time I spent learning before there was YouTube and even before AnimSchool, I've kind of cut through all the baloney that you don't need to know, that you think you might need to know, or you think someone has said is good, but once you apply it, you're like, this doesn't really make sense or doesn't really work. So that's kind of how I look at it, is kind of like cut to the chase of like what's actually
it reminds me a little bit of like a Disneyland ride and a fast pass. So like you could wait 2 hours in line to take the Indiana Jones ride, but like AnimSchool is kind of like, here's a fast pass. Let's just show you exactly what you need to start getting the reel that you need. And like there's like with any art form, it's like there's an infinite amount of stuff you could focus on, but because we're focusing on what the industry actually needs, that is the fast pass. I'm going to show, let's see how this works. So we have this question. I was wondering if you could answer this, Scott. Does AnimSchool offer individual mentoring shots, mentoring and feedback on shots, or is it just classes?
Well, I mean, they're classes that provide mentoring and feedback, but it's not on a necessarily an individual basis. You'll come into a class of, you know, I think upwards of roughly 10 potentially sometimes, but a lot of, like my previous class, we had 5. So you do get some smaller class sizes, but yeah, I mean, the way classes typically are structured, you get, you know, for me, my classes are on Monday and Wednesday, and Monday we go over everyone's shot. We hop into synchsketch. I do drawings and notes and basically giving that feedback on the shot that you're working on for that class. And then Wednesday, I go in and provide the class aspect of it, where give a lecture, and I like to go in and into people's Maya files and show them like how would I be addressing the concepts and topics that we talked about that day. So yeah, it kind of it's just
I would say you definitely get one-on-one feedback, but you'll have those other individuals in the class at the same time. There's like a lecture day and then a critique day. So like Scott would, like Maria, like if you would submit every week, you would submit your shot and you would get a personalized feedback, but it would be with other students, which is actually really cool because those 4 other students you're with, they might actually have other animation problems that you might not be having in your shot, but you can watch as Scott helps solve those problems or point out stuff. So it actually feels, by having some of the other students in the class, I actually find it even more motivating because not that it's a competition, but like we're kind of all trying to get our best shot. It's a very like
you get inspired by it.
Inspiring situation, actually.
Yeah. And then another thing is, so one thing I do whenever I work with a new director and stuff is I go into our dailies, even when I don't have a shot, especially early on, so I can see any reoccurring feedback or notes, because if someone else is struggling with an issue that someone keeps seeing, then most likely you're going to at one point come to that issue. So you can kind of, as you listen to others, you can kind of learn from what they're doing and what they're saying. And a lot of times I'll, you know, have the same kind of note for multiple different students, and I'll refer back to previous shots. Like, hey, we looked at this with so-and-so shot. I'm kind of seeing the same thing, and reiterate it. So you can learn also by getting the feedback from the others that are in your class as well, not just on the individual feedback of your specific shot. So
yeah, that's awesome. So thanks so much for that, Scott. And I think we're going to jump into it in just a minute, but I want to talk about some of the other ways AnimSchool works. And if you have, we can't like obviously like answer every question, but if you have a question, please put it in the chat, and we can feature it just like we did Maria's. But we're going to hop right in. I'm just going to talk about some of the other things you get when you go to AnimSchool. So it's an 11-week term. We have 4 terms a year. I think we have like, I need to check, but the application deadline for Winter term is in 5 days. So if you're interested, go check that out. It's in 5 days. 11-week terms, you're like I said, there's a class size kind of vary between 5 and 10. And you can check out, let me show you. I should have stayed there. If you're curious about who we have, you just click over here where it says instructors, and this is kind of our docket of instructors. So take a look at our instructors and see where they're working, see what projects they've worked on. Just kind of like Scott was talking about, he just finished working on Wish, also working at Epic. So you can see, you know, what are the kind of pros I want to work with. So get to know our instructors on there. And then the other cool thing that you get when you there's some other benefits you get when you apply for an AnimSchool class is you also get complimentary art classes. And that's what I wanted to talk about really quick. That's something that I do. And I just want to show you some student work from my class last term. I'm very, very excited about the hard work that the students in my class did last term. So let me just check this out. You guys see my screen? Okay. So what's awesome about AnimSchool is we not only want you to get super qualified to have a cool reel to be qualified for the industry, but we also want you to be art literate. So these are complimentary classes. They're not graded, that are open, that we let anyone while you're enrolled at AnimSchool to check out. So I teach most terms. Next term, I'm teaching a sketchbook class, but all the other terms I teach kind of a intro to Photoshop and digital painting, but we can, you could be at all levels. And I just want to show you these because these are students last term who before my class had never painted digitally before. And so if you're wanting to learn how to digitally paint, AnimSchool is another great place to go. So these are some assignments from students, and then we teach how to do your own work. So here's some student work from that. So definitely like keep that in mind. So we'll jump a little bit more into AnimSchool, but I know we're like really excited about getting these reels looked at. So I'm going to show you a little bit more about AnimSchool, but since we do have Scott here, and you're in Florida, right now? Yeah. So we'll get these up and running. So let me look at these here. So we're going to start off with Caroline LaVille. So thank you so much for submitting today. And we're going to share yours. So 1 second here. It's called, here you go. Can we see this now? All right. Okay, Scott. We're going to get this started. Scott, you're the pro here, so you tell me when I need to stop, and we're going full steam ahead on this. Here we go. I'm going to go full screen. Oh, I guess not. All right.
What do you want to be when you grow up?
Woo! Nice job, Caroline.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, it looks, you have a lot of great stuff on here. Like I think you've done a good job of kind of, let me go through some of like my philosophies on demo reels. You know, a lot of it is subjective and it depends on the studio you're wanting to work for. My philosophy is always like, just put your favorite stuff, because you're gonna end up kind of getting offers from studios that have similar tastes and like what you like, and you're going to get along while working there, I think, a lot more than if you try really hard to curate to a specific studio. So just always try and be honest with like who you are creatively and stuff like that. But these first two shots, I think, are looking great. A lot of wonderful stuff in here, a lot of good weight and creativity with it. You know, a lot of these comments that I might have on your reel is going to dictate depend on what like kind of what you want to do with things. So I like that a lot of your shots are being creative. This shot here, this is kind of one of these shots where this one and the next one, this cycle too. I wonder if, like, for me especially, the cycle, I don't know if that's something you necessarily need on your reel, because in our earlier shots, especially that first shot, we're showcasing a lot of weight and good mechanics. So when I see cycles or those like sort of more basic kind of characters like this guy doing the parkour with the cat, it kind of feels a little more studenty. So when you start getting to a level like you're at here, where you're doing these good, sort of dialogue and the action shot you have at the beginning, we don't really need to see those that focus on those really basic principles, because we're showcasing those principles in these more complicated shots. If we're not quite at that level, then it's nice to kind of put those in to say, hey, I understand these the basics, and I'm just still kind of working to put it all together. But I think you're kind of doing that, especially in those first two shots. I think the last shot you have on your reel, I don't even think you really need it, to be honest. I think it kind of it doesn't match the quality for me that you're having in some of these earlier shots. So like I said, you've done a good job of knowing what your best shots are and kind of front loading those. But I know from interviews I've done with some places, there's some people, supervisors and recruiters, what they like to do when they look at a demo reel is they like to go in and find, in their opinion, the worst shot, and that's all they pay attention to. They get rid of everything else and they judge everyone on what they consider each person's worst shot. And they do this because they like to be like, hey, I can at least expect this quality from this artist, and then they can make their decisions from there. So after hearing that, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm gonna make their job really difficult on trying to decide which one is the worst, because I'm gonna keep everything the same quality. So I don't know if you really need that last shot, because I feel your stuff here at the beginning is outperforming that, and we're already thinking stuff's looking pretty good. Just some stuff I would say as I look at this to kind of continue to work on and stuff, because you're doing a lot of good posing and good weight in a lot of these shots. But like our second shot here with the lip sync, we could still just use a little bit of polish on things. Some of our lip sync and eyebrow movements are a little sharp with our ease-ins and outs, so it'd be nice to see a little bit more polish. They kind of will pop and lock into place a little bit. So just kind of be looking to push yourself with that polish, that last 10% of that ease in or ease out. For me, the way I like to kind of, or how I encourage people to kind of grow and learn in these manners, is to really frame through some of your favorite animation. And the more you go frame by frame through that high quality animation that you love, the more your brain kind of remembers like what it's supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to look like from that high quality animation, that then you start in your own shot framing through and being like, this feels weird now, because you've exposed yourself to that high quality animation that you're inspired by and stuff. So yeah, I think a lot of the posing and that you're doing on all these shots is looking good. Just some polish in some of these facial animation. We like to see a little bit more organicness. It's really surprising how much your mouth will, or your whole face will move just from opening your jaw. The weirdest but best way to discover this is to take a non-permanent marker and draw essentially your wireframe on your face, and then just videotape yourself going through expressions, and you'll notice just a simple thing of like opening your jaw will affect like everything all the way up to the eyes. So yeah, it's not as fun to wash it off, but it's.
Did you have a bad experience with a permanent marker, Scott? That's what I was thinking. I was thinking, like, no. I want to be an animator, and you were like, You were like Hellraiser or something.
Luckily for me to experience this, I did not have to draw on my face, but I did have video of supervising animator from Spies in Disguise and Annie Award-winning Jeff Gabor, who had done it for himself, and I got to look at his video of that, and that's where I kind of learned it. But yeah, you'll be really surprised at how much things kind of push and pull each other around. So that's kind of like, you know, that's kind of higher tier kind of stuff we're looking at, and that's kind of where I'd encourage you to kind of keep pushing yourself, is that level of organicness, especially in the face on these characters. Because I think you're really starting to lock into some of these mechanics and weight, especially from that first shot. When I first saw that first shot, I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, we're understanding some weight, timing, rhythm, all those basics, and now trying to get into that more polish and detail and that stuff that what I like to say the animators will notice, but your grandmother won't. Kind of level of quality.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just I think my biggest advice for your reel is, you know, just, you know, make sure you, as you keep progressing, start cutting off that stuff that's not quite that same level of quality, so you don't have those, so no one can go and nitpick anything. They're always just going, well, this all just looks great and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
And I want to say is we all have to start somewhere. So like, even as you're doing these kinds of things, I do think it's a good idea if you're going, well, maybe, you know, I'm not at the level, like this is really cool at this level yet. Say you're making your reel. Yeah, fine. Make a reel with your this part of your journey as a practice, but it's almost kind of like, you know, a boxing match where every time you add a new shot, does one of your shots get eliminated, or like as soon as you have enough where you're like, okay, I'm going to eliminate this. But I 100% agree with Scott. This is about art in general, about you are only as strong as your weakest piece of art or your weakest shot. And there's a really famous American photographer named Ansel Adams. He's considered to be like, you know, he did all these American landscapes. And there was a news guy he wanted to interview and want to understand why he was so good. Why did Ansel Adams stand out? And Ansel Adams invited him into his dark room and kind of gave away the secret of why he was so good. And the reason Ansel Adams was so good, he might not even have been the best photographer in the world. However, he had all of these shots on the string, like getting ready to be processed. And they were all beautiful. They were of like the Tetons or something. And he had like 7 or 8 of them. And Ansel Adams proceeded to take like a lighter or throw them out. He started just lighting them on fire. And the guy was like, what are you doing? Those were beautiful. Like every single one of those. And then at the very end, he had one left. He had one mountain range left. And he said, I had to sacrifice all these other beautiful pictures so that this one could be great. And it's always stuck with me, because it's like, yes, like we can have these like shots that are very important to us. Like maybe they're really important. Like those body mechanic shots that you worked on allowed you to be able to do this. So the stuff that you learned, these are some really important lessons you learned. You use them on this. So you sacrifice these ones in your reel so that you can show those ones. I don't know. What do you think about that, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, that's I think that's a really valid point. And yeah, that's exactly how it is. It's just, you know, I mean, you'll always struggle with this. I still struggle with it when I put my reel together. Be like, but that one was so nice and fun, and it was so important. But you're just like, hey, like, you know, I've grown from that, and so let me just showcase what I'm like, where I'm at now as well. But yeah, it's also just, it's something I encourage my students. It's just also making sure that you're showcasing, like, you know, where you're at, and I believe there, you know, we have some of those things that are classic student learning block assignments, but based on the first few shots, it's like, cool, we've moved on to like, we're producing film kind of content. We're producing, you know, stuff with more story and depth to it than just cycles or something like that. So though I think you did a good job in using those and learning and developing, I think the stuff I'm assuming, taking an assumption that those shots at the beginning of your reel you've done more recently, but yeah, I think they're kind of showcasing a more sophisticated outlook to the animation art than just learning and exploring the mechanics and principles of things.
Yeah, so now we'll move on to the next one. And we're excited about this one. This was actually is a submission from an AnimSchool student. So 1 second here. There we go. Okay. Okay, good job, Carl.
I don't know if anyone, I couldn't see it play through.
Oh, you couldn't? It did not play, right? Oh.
I don't know if everyone else on the stream did. I could not see. So I just saw this first still, which looks great.
Oh, is it not? It didn't play. Okay, well, sorry about that. Let's see. Let's try that again. Sorry.
Maybe something
try
frozen.
one more time. So thanks for your patience here. Let's try again. Yeah, next time, Scott, just tell me.
I didn't know if I was.
Oh, no worries, man.
Is he doing something else?
Okay, so. All right.
I mean, if everyone else saw it, I can.
I don't. They probably did.
Through.
All right. Can you guys see this? Okay.
I can see it, and it's playing.
Okay, so
there's
Carl Lewis is actually went to AnimSchool, so we're going to see an AnimSchool reel. Still going to give you a critique. We don't pull any. Scott doesn't pull any punches. He's not like your grandma. So grandmas just love us. They're so nice.
Did Jesse did it share audio?
Oh, I didn't share audio? Oh,
yeah.
guys, I'm so sorry.
I think so.
Well, we'll try again.
And we got to click that button.
Oh, man. I'm so used to
Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
We'll try it one more time. Sorry so much, man.
I'm just glad you're the one driving it.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. I think I got it now. All right. Sorry about that. We're technical difficulties. All right, Carl, thanks for your patience. I know you're here. So, Carl, if you have any comments, just put them in the chat, okay? Or questions.
They gave you the final code.
We hear it.
Yeah, they did.
I knew they would. Hand it over. You should know by now, Gillen. Even Satan comes as an angel of light.
Now listen up, ladies, because I'm only going to say this once, and it is just 3 little words. Men are simple. We cannot be trained.
Cool. Awesome, Carl. Looking cool. Yeah, I mean, for me, I think a lot of these shots are working well. Some stuff that I really like that what you're doing here is everything you're doing is telling a story. It's not just like, okay, I got 2 characters that are talking. Like, you've set up a scenario, you've put in, a world that they live in. It feels like we're stepping into something that exists, which is great. That's kind of a huge thing when people are looking at work that especially they know someone has done on their own. That's not part of the, like, if you look at my reel, it's all stuff from movies I've worked on. So but here, knowing, okay, cool, this is all personal work that they've worked on at home, and we can see, hey, this person's not just moving stuff, they're creating characters, they're creating a world, they're telling stories, which is what especially if you're going into film, that's what it's all about. So that's already like recruiters and animators looking at your work, they're already going to be like, cool, we got a storyteller, we got a filmmaker, awesome, like that's great. And you're showcasing a lot of sort of the principles and stuff. Again, if you go into this next shot here with the body mechanics stuff, it's all cool, but again, I think you've kind of maybe moved past that. And I will say though, if this is a shot you did want to keep on your reel, you have some audio effects in here as well, some like grunting and sound from the character. And I'm not sure if you've added that in after or you had it while you were animating, but definitely if you do have these audio cues and stuff, really listen to the tonal quality of what they're sounding like, and try and make sure that even if your character is not, you know, vocally speaking or doing dialogue, listen to those sound effects and try and implement it into your animation. You know, how the body moves, how the body lands, how things, the timing and texture of it, so that it really comes across. It's going to add this like next level of believability to it. So I always like to try and get all of those sound effects and everything in there while I'm animating, because it's going to dictate how I might pose out the character or what my spacing might be and things like that. But it's still looking nice and solid. But I think it, you know, with what you have around it, it's just, you know, yeah, do you need it? You don't need it. I would potentially like leave that up to you, but for me, it's like, yeah, we don't need this. We're telling great stories on these other ones. And kind of a similar kind of concept here with your next dialogue shot. Well, talk with one thing. I think you're doing some great posing with the face and the body, and you're pushing stuff, but definitely always also, if you stop, this frame's great here. If we think about silhouette, and the way I like to kind of think about silhouette is a little adjusted from what you might see in like The Illusion of Life or the Survival Kit, is I like to think of it in the terms of a graphic designer. So here I'm thinking, okay, we have a bottle that's pouring out alcohol or liquid, and I want this to be in a silhouette so it can read really well. For me, it's not just about like if I have, you know, let's see, my dog's toy here, this stuffed squid, Christmas squid. It's not just about putting it out in silhouette. It's about making sure that I'm showcasing the iconic information about this, or the most graphic version of it. So for this, right now you just see a squid with some kind of hat. But if I position this little, you know, whatever the tuft is here of this character out to the side and showcase that iconic element, now we can really tell, hey, this is a squid wearing a Christmas Santa hat. And that's kind of what I would do in your shot there as well with the bottle. We have the iconic aspect of that specific bottle being the nozzle, but it's kind of muddied up with the hand, and it looks like that's a watch. So if we can take that nozzle, which is that iconic aspect of what's happening, and push it out into silhouette, I think it could allow us to read right off the bat. And the easier it is for the audience to view an image, the more appealing it's going to be, and it's going to feel more enjoyable to watch. And we're going to avoid confusion. I caveat all of that with, if you can't make a natural, believable looking pose while getting a silhouette, it's not worth it. We don't want to make the character feel awkward. Though in that pose, I do think you could potentially make some quick little adjustments to make that read a little better. So when thinking about silhouette, I've kind of shifted my way of thinking from I put things out in the open to what's the important iconic aspect of that object, that body part, that pose, and make sure that is in a nice, clean, clear presentation to the audience. But yeah, again, this is another shot where you're, you know, the character's interacting with props, using things, the environment. There's a world that they exist in, you know, and you've customized the character as well, so it feels its own, which is really nice. You even have little effects in there, I see too, which is cool and adds a nice little bit. But yeah, even in some of these shots here too, we talk about texture of of sound quality in the audio. When playing out dialogue, I would think about that as two. I think of that the way in which things are said and not just how they're said. I think you could kind of advance up to a whole nother level of detail by really thinking about, like, you know, based on this, like, try and be really descriptive with that sound that your character is providing, and say, how can I visually showcase that, whether it's in the body movement, the mouth shapes, because not every, you know, let's say every ooh shape for that with ooh in dialogue, depending on, you can say ooh in many different ways and it's going to look a little different. So really dissect that audio and think, how can I visually showcase this to the audience? And it just kind of stitches it all together even more there. But yeah, a lot of great stuff there, but just some things to kind of go in and I think plus and move forward. Mm-hmm.
So this is a question for you, Scott. If there's only 20 seconds left in reel after taking out the basic shot, is company okay with that? So let's just say, let's talk about this one. If Carl is doing a reel and he just shows these two, is that fine to get hired?
Yeah, I mean, I know people that have gotten hired on one shot. And to be honest, like, in a lot of reel reviews, depending on where you're at and how big the company is, you have many different kind of like people you have to go through, because there could be thousands of reels, and a lot of times people are making their kind of decisions in that first 10 seconds, to be honest. Like, they're making a lot of their assumptions right real quick. And also, like, there's some reels I watch that are like over 2 minutes to 3 minutes long and more, where I'm like, I can't, like, I love it. Even if it's great, I'm like, it's just too long. I got a lot of these to go through. So you don't need it to be long. If it's quality, they don't care how long it is. I've never in a reel review heard someone say, well, their reel's not very long. They might say, I'd like to see more from this animator if it feels like they've kind of just shown one aspect of their skill sets. But never, I mean, they're great, but they only have 20 seconds of work on here. I've personally never heard that is a complaint.
I think you're right. It's more like, I think we're so worried about, oh, I got to show all this stuff I did. I think you should be more worried about your weakest shot than anything. I think that's still the biggest thing. But Carl, I want to compliment you. I remember seeing this shot show up. I thought this was so entertaining. I think that there's a big this would be personally, but Scott, I think you could probably agree with me here, is animation is super important, but because these are personal shots, is it appealing? Is it entertaining? And I just feel like this was so entertaining.
Because I'm only going to say this once.
Like this shot.
Yeah. I mean, something on that. So, you know, there's one thing if you can go into a studio and just, you know, animate cleanly, animate well. But the people who really make an impact at a studio and really stick around for the long run and move up the ladder are those who, when they're given a shot, they don't just finish it. They make it so, like, hey, you know, this shot only turned out this way because Jesse did it. You know, they bring their own, and they bring something unique to the shot and to the project. So being able to do things like this on your personal shot that are entertaining and unique and creative is gonna just benefit you down the road, because that's what they like to see. Is like, hey, this shot is only this cool because this animator did it. If any other animator did it, it wouldn't be the same. And that's what's gonna get them to, like, not want to let you go. I want to make sure you stay there and everything.
Yeah, this is a question for you. I can say, so, like, someone who's like maybe doing more feature film or TV style animation, would video games companies consider that kind of?
I mean, that might be a better question for someone who's hiring for games. But from my experience, I don't have any game work on my demo reel, and I went to a game company and I have a number of friends that have done that. But I don't want to come out and say that it's like, it works all the time, do it. But from my experience, you don't have to have game work to go work in games, they can see, hey, you know how to animate. You'll be able to work through the adjustments. And to be honest, so far, it's not that big of a,
Yeah,
big of a change.
I mean, in a previous workshop, our kind of advanced game animation instructor, JP Ryan Miller, who works at Activision Blizzard, he came from a feature film background, and he said it's just fundamentals more than anything. Like, yes, like you can definitely, like, your body mechanics need to be really good, but it's just the fundamentals that they
can see that in no matter what kind of animation. They mostly are probably going to want to talk to you in an interview and see if you're willing to, learn and grow and adapt and make changes, and not just, well, this is how I did it at this big studio, so I'm not gonna, do whatever you're asking because I don't understand it. So as long as you're going in being very open and being like, yeah, I want to learn some new stuff, they'll be like, great, because we have stuff to teach you.
I'm going to bring up this for you, Scott. Like you said, oh man, if your reel's too long, it might actually hurt you. But let's talk about the opening. Everyone has their own little personality. We saw that with the last one too. Everyone has kind of like, hey, this is me. Is there any kind of guidelines for you in terms of how you present yourself? And this is really cool, Carl, your kind of digital painting of yourself. What do you kind of recommend in terms of that? Because I think you don't need to leave this on very long because people can pause it, right? Like like I think you're leaving on a nice amount of time.
Just have anything you can add to showcase who you are, I think is great, even once you start working at a studio too. Just being yourself. Don't feel like you need to do anything, like if I think my reel just says my name and email, and that's it. I don't have anything else on it. So don't feel like you have to. Like, if don't beat yourself up. I can't think of anything. But if you have something that you're like, hey, cool, I did this cool caricature myself, or I did this cool, I have this funny thing, feel free to put it on. No one's gonna like be annoyed. But yeah, you don't need to leave it on for long. Just get to the animation, leave it on for a second or two so you can read through the name and just get going. But don't feel like you got to do something crazy different. But if you have something that you think is cool and you like, then just go ahead and put it on there so they can potentially remember who it'll be a potential way of them like, oh yeah, it's that reel with blah blah blah. But it's not crucial. But if you got it, go for it.
And Carl, because you've graduated from AnimSchool, I know this, and we always say to everyone, right, like you went through AnimSchool, you're not done. And I've heard many animators and artists say this, is always be working on a personal shot. So this kind of, Scott, for you, like what kind of shot, if he's going to start another shot to strengthen his reel, what kind of shot should he work on?
For me, this is my opinion. People have different opinions. I would say whatever you want to do. So like whatever you're wanting to do at work, do that, because that's what they're gonna be. So like I do mostly like kind of cartoony, more goofy, funky kind of animation, and that's what my reel has, and that's what everyone in the industry knows me for doing. And I always try and make a shift at these new studios to go and do more subtle, emotional acting stuff. But they immediately, right out of the gate, cast me the funky, goofy, cartoony stuff because that's what they saw on my reel. Like, this guy can do it. This guy must like it because he's doing it. So let's give him more. So I would say whatever you want to do, like if whatever kind of shot you want to animate at work, do that, because that's what they're going to see that and go, okay, cool. This is what you know what to do. You're doing it well. Here you go. Here's more. That's why we brought you on. So that's my recommendation. I know it's not like a super clear answer, but whatever you're excited about, if you want to do another multi-character dialogue, or you want to do maybe a more action Spider-Verse kind of stuff, if that's something you're into, go for that. Whatever you want to animate, put it in there and do it.
Okay, so I want to say Scott is 100% right. Like, don't listen to anybody else. He's completely right. Because the end of the day, you need to do the kind of work that you want to be doing. I think a lot of us are so concerned about getting in the door of animation or in this industry that we're like, what do they want? What do they want? What people want is what you bring to the table. So if you are working on the kind of animation you want to see, you're going to do better. You really are. And this is for any artist out there. Like Rick Rubin is super popular right now, and he helped, tons and tons of artists. And if you listen to him, it's like, don't make work that you think other people will like. If you are working on the kind of work you like, you'll kind of gravitate to the kind of places you want to be. For real.
Yeah.
It's great advice. I love that, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
from experience.
Yeah. I can say it too. Like, it's not just even from like a painting standpoint, the same thing. Like, my friends who are kind of miserable that are artists are ones who are constantly just trying to make what other people like.
Yeah.
And there are times we have to do that. Sometimes to do your art, you might have to work at a coffee shop. That's normal too. But on the side, if you want to be an artist, which we do, right? Like, we're choosing this industry because we love it. You should be trying to work on stuff that you like doing, because I have a friend over at Riot Games. He's like an art director there. And he said, hey, you really need to think about, do you want to be doing this 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? You better freaking love it, because it sounds really fun in practice, but if you don't love it, like, this might not be the right thing, And
yeah, 40 hours a week becomes long.
It gets long. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah. I don't know if you have the next one, Scott.
I don't.
If in the chat for us, the next shot.
I don't think so. Do you have one?
I could grab one. Yeah. One second. We're gonna go. Let's see. 1 second. I'm gonna stop share here. But yeah, while we're getting the next one, feel free to ask some more questions in the chat while we get this next one going. So here we go. Okay. Here's a good one. So what about, maybe talk about this, Scott? Like, what do you say to an absolute beginner when they're thinking about AnimSchool? Like, what would you say?
Mean, we have, I believe, that Intro to Maya class, which is exactly what it teaches you right from the beginning, knowing, never opening up a 3D software to, being able to make stuff in there. So yeah, I have, many students that have started from Intro to Maya. They've never done anything before. And even, I'm not sure if this is what your question was, can you still apply to AnimSchool without a 3D background? I've even had students who were 2D animators who wanted to learn CG, 3D, and they made the switch over. They had not done any CG stuff, and they started with AnimSchool learning their 3D journey. But you don't have to have anything. You can start from that Intro to Maya.
You don't need to at all. I think one of my favorite movies, and I think it's a movie that animators made for other artists, which is I love Ratatouille. And the reason I love Ratatouille is the message behind Ratatouille, which is anyone can cook. And what you learn from that movie is that anyone can cook, but not everyone wants to. So at the end of the day, you remember when Remy is like talking to his brother and he's like, hey, try this out, try this food. And the brother's like, yeah, it's okay. He just didn't have that spark. He didn't really want or care about it. But Remy cared about it so much that he did everything he could to become a cook. And so I think when people say, can I be an animator? Do you want it? And when you want something, you work for it. Are you willing to work for it? Are you willing to do the things that you need to work for it? And we have set up our school for the absolute beginner. So I care more about someone being hungry to learn art or animation than whether they have a natural talent. I think talent sometimes overrated. I've watched people who work hard just do circles around people who are talented. And sometimes talent can be a hindrance because you might have some early success, but talent only holds you so far, where like desire sometimes can take you further. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, that's exactly my thoughts, because animation and art in general is one of those things that it's just practice, it's a skill. So the more you do it, the better you're going to get. And the more you want to do it, the more you're going to do it. And then you're going to get better. But if you're already good and then you don't really care about doing it, then you kind of stalled out there. So you're not going to grow as much. You might start off good, but that's kind of where it ends if you don't have that desire.
Yeah. Well, we're going to share another one. This person, here's someone this is an interesting one because it's someone who is working in the industry. So we're going to look at somebody who has some shots from a movie that's out. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's make sure audio is being shared. Can you guys see the screen? Is it on? Okay. Let's 1 second here. If I move it out of the way, does it still show? Second. Where did it go? Yeah, I am so used to Zoom. This like streaming thing is throwing me off. So thanks everyone for being patient with me. I'm gonna try one more time. Yeah, it's throwing me off. So I have like 2 monitors and I'm having a heck of a time here.
It looks like you're watching a tennis match.
Yeah, I am. I'm like jumping through I have a Cintiq. I'm going like, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So it's like I gotta pull this back up. So just bear with me. Let's have another question while I'm figuring this out. That's crazy. Okay. All right. All right. So. All right. I don't know if you know about this, but I would. We actually would recommend that you don't take both. They're so different. I think a lot of people think that these are the same. So, Scott's also like a traditional artist. He like oil paints his stuff. And so, what can you say, Scott, about kind of AnimSchool, how we do things compared to like a brick and mortar? Like I went to a brick and mortar where we learned everything, and so there's kind of 2 schools of that. Could you maybe talk about the difference between like a specialist and a generalist while I'm pulling that up?
Yeah, I mean, same thing here. I mean, I learned how to weld at my school too. So like we learned everything. But yeah, I mean, I think, AnimSchool and where it kind of excelled was kind of realizing that in animation, especially when it comes to, feature film and games and stuff like that, is everything's kind of departmentalized and you kind of hyper focus in on one thing so the quality can be really high. So yeah, that's why we kind of recommend try not to do both, because you got to kind of do one really, really well and not multiple things decently. Though generalists in the industry do have a place. They're just generally not at the feature film places like Disney, Sony, Pixar, and places like that. But there are places where you can be a generalist. But AnimSchool, we're kind of gearing and helping guide people towards that feature film and AAA game kind of stuff. So I'm kind of in the boat, having been learning as a generalist, kind of like you're going to have a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit more success in the industry, kind of focusing on one and showcasing, hey, I'm spectacular at this one thing. But you can also say, hey, I know a little bit of this, but focusing on one thing in this, it's already so complicated. Trying to do more than one thing.
Yeah. and a lot of people ask, they go like, if I had who is AnimSchool for? Like, I would say AnimSchool is for those who are just beginning. Like we have people saying, hey, is this good for beginners? It's great for beginners, but also it's great for people who did have a more generalist education like Scott and I did.
Yeah.
My school, for example, has a pretty close relationship with AnimSchool. I went to Brigham Young University, and they have a really great animation department. They've sent a lot of people to big studios and like Pixar and other stuff. But they also sent a lot of people to us after they graduate, and they say, yeah, AnimSchool is a great finishing school. So if you've got like a generalist education, AnimSchool is a really good place to go to if you really want to focus on 3D modeling and really go through that, or through animation. So consider us if you're going, I really want to get my reel up to stuff. You might have got a good base, and then AnimSchool can help you get your like reel all the way. So with that, we're going to actually get this started. So here we have Zhu Yun Lao. Sorry if I said that wrong, but here we go.
Oh my God! Oh my, I'm gonna be sick.
Leo, what happened? Is Donnie bleeding?
With this factory shut down, how does it feel to have made the city safer for Toon?
Jenny, can you hear me?
Jenny!
I'm coming, honey. I'm trying. I'm doing everything I can. And
remember, don't let any human see you, Because why? Humans are the demon scum of the earth. Avoid them, don't say hi. They lust to murder that which is different from them. To interact with them is to die.
We're gonna be heroes.
Okay, so I think it's interesting, Scott. I'm just going to jump ahead and say almost the same thing. I think you're going to be giving the same advice like that you give to everyone, which is to like eliminate some stuff.
Yeah.
Guessing.
Yeah.
Very cool stuff, man. Very cool.
I think some stuff like one thing to touch on for those who because sometimes we get into the industry, and this is what my situation was, is you might start working at some jobs, but it's not quite where you want to be yet. And a lot of students at AnimSchool do that. I've had many students who, are working at different studios, but they kind of are looking to improve, or maybe they want to kind of try and get to a different studio or work on bigger projects or whatever it might be. But if you are working in the industry and you're looking to improve, and you're putting together a reel, putting your work that you've done at work is great, because it lets the reviewer know, hey, this person can come into a studio. They clearly are taking feedback and getting things across the finish line. So it's like their first concern about, hey, can they address notes and get things done, is kind of answered. So if you do have professional work and you're, proud of it, put it in there. Even if it's, this is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was, a well-known project. Even if it's not a super well-known project, they'll be able to tell that it is professional work. And they'll be like, great, cool. They can take something to the finish line. So it's great to have this stuff in. I will say, looking at your kind of what Jesse was saying, I think some of the personal shots you have in there, we might not need anymore. We're showcasing things like this dog shot.
Yeah.
There's some mechanics. Partially, I think it might be a bit going on with the rig not providing you with the stuff you need, but it doesn't quite have the same weight and mechanics success that you're having in a lot of these other shots. Especially the Ninja Turtle stuff is all looking really cool. So I think things like that you just don't really need in there, because it's not like, I have a good buddy. He actually has moved over to tech and works at Meta now, but he worked at DreamWorks and Blue Sky for years and years. He tells me, when I told me last time I put my reel together, he said, if you put in a shot and it doesn't tell me anything new about you as an animator, we don't need it. And that's kind of how I see that some of the shots as well. They're not letting us know like, hey, this person can really tackle complicated multi-character shots, or this animator can really handle subtlety. So yes, things like that dog shot I don't think quite need in there, but yeah.
The other thing I want to say is I think this is thanks so much for sharing your reel, and this is awesome. I love this movie so much. Also, as someone who teaches digital painting at AnimSchool, it's great to see the Spider-Verse, Last Wish, and Ninja Turtles taking chances with the visual style. So it's really cool that you got to work on this project. But I also think this is a really great way for a recruiter to see what you worked on. I love the way that you've presented the part that you worked on, because sometimes when we're doing these collaborative projects, it can be really hard for the recruiter to know what you did. So I think you did a really good job here, like by graying out the animation you didn't do and putting it. This is really awesome. Like I understood it right away. This is what you were doing. You put it up here. So this is really great. So if you're ever working on a collaborative project, to make very clear like what you did. Maybe the only other thing I would say, because some people, if you're like more generous, obviously this is an animation one, but let's say you did modeling or you were a rigger or something. This is more for like a rigger or 3D modeler. You want to almost put, like, you would say, you want to state like the kind of thing you did on it. So you could say like animation. I would say that just for clarity, this is more a case for character artists where they're like responsible for character, rigging, posing like that's important in a like a character reel. Like obviously this is an animation reel, so it's not as important. So I know that you did the animation here, so that's really cool. Yeah, and in terms of like these other shots, like do you have any other comments, Scott? Like
I mean, I think for me some of the Chip and Dale stuff wasn't quite as high quality, but is like, I think the stuff you've done it on the Ninja Turtles movie is looking really good and,
awesome.
And is really cool stuff. Definitely just kind of, I guess, some bits of recurring stuff I'm seeing in the personal work that might be kind of an issue to take note of is just be careful of some of your positioning of your arms and hands and stuff. Don't be afraid to go in and use most rigs now have those controls that can kind of move the the forearm and the upper arm, so you can kind of bend and curve things a bit, and you can get a little bit more natural of a feeling. We don't want to go too far with that stuff, but it can help eliminate that pipe cleaner feeling. So the way I like to think of it is to just get a little bit more appeal out of those poses. Is we don't want to bend the arms like you're doing really well in the cartoony shot. That works well for that, but for a shot like this, we don't want to do that because that's not the style. I like to think of it as that we all have, muscle and a little bit of fat there on our arms, and gravity will pull it down. So my arm is not perfectly straight here. It kind of gets tugged down a little bit, causing a very subtle curve. But if we can put some of those elements into our posing, it's going to add this extra little level of detail that's really going to not be noticed, but it's going to shine through and just feel more natural. Same with this arm pose here. To kind of alleviate that tight pinch we have on that wrist, we can take some of those controls and just slightly shape it. Don't break the anatomy, maintain the skeletal structure, but adjust some of that soft tissue, muscle, skin, and fat to create a little bit more appealing of poses there. So yeah, and that's a little more detail, but every little bit of detail you add into those poses is going to eventually add up to making something look really, really great. And something I like to do in my class when we start talking about posing is I'll go into the Maya files and save out frame 20 of the student's work, then go to copy it to frame 21 and make these tiny little detail adjustments and appeal notes to the pose, and then flip back and forth. And as I'm doing it, most of the time the students go, it's not really doing much. There's not really much happening. And then I flip back and forth between the two poses, and they can really see how those little details all add up into creating something that's more appealing and things like that. But yeah, it looks like in what you're doing there on the Ninja Turtle movies that you're really starting to dive into those details of appeal as well. So
yeah,
kind of keep doing what you're doing.
Really cool reel. I thought that was awesome. I think, again, this is to anyone at any level, right? Like we're going to have people who are absolute beginners here at AnimSchool and people who are pros. And want to let you know, it's like, well, like AnimSchool is actually a great place for pros. If you're thinking like, well, I've been in the industry, and maybe if you're film, like I just want like a little bit of sharpening of my skills. AnimSchool is actually like still a really great. We have a lot of pros show up. So let's say you don't want to go through the whole program. You can actually just take a single class. So it's called Express. So if you wanted to, this is where you do have to submit a reel. So right, like if we had a reel like yours, and you were like wanting to do like class 6, like if you want to work on your facial performance or your final classes, we do have single classes you can take. And so if you're curious what we have to offer, you just go here. It says classes offered, and you can kind of, based on where you are in your journey, you can choose where you're gonna go. So just want to let you know that we definitely are helping pros get like level up. So AnimSchool has like a place for where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
I've had plenty of students who are working, at various different studios and places, just trying to, get that, little extra, work on a few things they might have been struggling with, or just trying to get that little bit of structure from a school to get them motivated to do that personal shot.
Yeah. So Scott, even for like in general on Reels, I really like this question. For those of you who don't know, when you're getting a shot ready to, the final, it's just like anything, right? Like I like that word polish. I always think of like Polish though, like a Polish hot dog. So it's like, what people are like, why do they keep talking about Polish? No, it's polish in animation. So do you have any tips about polish? And I have some thoughts on this too, from like the painting standpoint.
Yeah.
Polish is a tricky one, I think.
I think one thing that helped me a lot with polish is I used to just kind of blindly just do things, and that was never any good. I mean, it was fine, but it felt like there could be more. And it was when I talked to a friend of mine, Louis. He's over at Disney now too, is supervising, and I asked him about polish, and he said, "Well, I don't think of it really as polish. He thinks of it as adding organicness to his animation. So he's thinking about how the different parts are moving in tandem with each other, and how are they kind of pushing and pulling that muscle and tissue and body parts, because everything is connected. So once I kind of stopped thinking of it as polish and thinking of it more as like, how can I just get that extra little bit of that connectivity and organicness in my animation, especially on the face, it kind of felt like I was polishing with intent and not just, I'm just gonna polish. It gave me a little bit more of a goal to strive for. So that was a huge beneficial thing that I kind of learned with polishing. So
yeah, and then I'm gonna be pulling up the next one here in just a minute. But we have some other questions while we're pulling up. So someone said something about age that I thought was interesting. But let's see. Oh, this was interesting. What do you think about this? Oh man, this is me. Oh man, I'm 41. So what do you think about someone who?
What is the situation of 3D animators after 40 plus? I mean, what's their future plans? I mean, I know people like you can animate at any age. I knew an animator a while ago. He didn't start animating till he was in his 30s, and he started on, I think, Little Mermaid. He was a cleanup artist or an assistant, I can't remember which one, to Glen Keane. And he was well into his 30s, I believe. And yeah, he's still doing great. He's worked on all different kinds of projects. So yeah, there's no it's not athletes where you have like a finite amount of time where you can learn it. I've had students that were in their late 30s, early 40s doing their second, third career change and stuff. I think a lot of animators, it's like it wasn't their first career choice. A lot of times they come to it a little later. They go do something else and this isn't really for me, and then they kind of come back to that animation thing. I have a lot of graphic design friends that made the switch. Even a funeral director made the switch over later on. So there's you can do whatever you want.
That's a great switch.
No one cares. They just can't. Are you excited to animate? And can you? So yeah.
I mean, the theme of today is animation reels, and what I think that matters more than age or gender or where you're from is the work. I think that's all that matters is your work good? There's a lot of people who become artists in their later years. There's lots of amazing stories of 50, 60, 70-year-old people becoming great artists, and they never did art before. I don't know how it is with animation, but I don't really see that limitation. It's if you're doing great work, then it doesn't really matter, I don't think.
Yeah, no one cares about anything, but that's what they always say at Disney is, back in the day, when things were a lot more, it was a little rougher for people. There wasn't as accepting. They always said coming onto the Disney lot was when all that stuff went away, because all Walt cared about was, are you a good artist, and can you help us make a cool movie? And they said that was the best part, is they got to come in and it felt like you know, there's just a bunch of artists just enjoying making stuff and having a good time, and they didn't care about anything else.
Yeah, and we had some of those old. How many old men were there? I forget. Like 9 old men. Like they're called the 9 old men. And they were doing it when they were old men. So
yeah, some of them did it when they were really old.
This is a tough one, Jordan. Like we do have. I didn't talk about that yet, but in the AnimSchool kind of way that we do stuff, we have our prerequisite courses, which are like the fundamental ones. So after class, because after body mechanics, you can choose to either keep on going to feature, the feature track, or the game animation emphasis. And the game animation emphasis is really, really awesome. We have instructors who are working at AAA games, and that's kind of what Scott's doing now. You, like you said, you don't even come from like a game background, and however you're working games. I think like more and more, I think they're both good. It's more like what kind of game you want to go into. Mm-hmm. So if you really love body mechanics, like you really love the movement of the human body, like, and you want to you want to learn how to do mocap cleanup, and you want to do more creature, like more quadruped. So like if you're really interested in like animating creatures, even if you were thinking I still want to go to a feature film, but you really love to animate quadrupeds, that's where I would recommend the pipeline. So, but if you're more interested in more like human performance, like talking heads, because it's more about that. Are you more interested in the movement? Movement's important than the other, but would you agree with that, Scott? It's like,
yeah,
what you want.
Yeah. If you
intermingle, it's hard to say. It's kind of personal preference.
Yeah, I mean, if your goal is to, you know, basically act through a character, and yeah, be that, you know, actor, then yeah, go in the feature route. But if you're wanting to kind of dive more into, you know, creature stuff and mechanics and, you know, I would say go into games if you really want to go into games, because you're going to learn a lot of stuff that's not needed for feature necessarily. But you're still going to learn a lot of the other animation concepts that you need to know in the game's pipeline. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to animation, if you're a good animator, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, if you're more into creatures, that games route might be a little better. And if you're more into kind of a lot of the stuff we've seen today, more, you know, up close, like shots, talking, and things like that, then yeah, definitely the feature film route you're going to want to go.
Yeah, I think it's more like, as you're animating, what we were saying before, do what you think sounds fun, and it'll kind of guide you. Okay, Jesus. Okay. Okay.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so this reel is much more like what I'm typically asked to do.
Like the cartoon. I picked this one, Scott, because it was more cartoony. So yeah, what do you have advice for like the cartoony route? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is working well. I think most of your shots are kind of pretty much like at that same level. I think you're doing a good job of the cartoony stuff and pushing things. Some things like we can see, especially in this first shot. One thing to remember with we go back one more, I think. Yeah, here with the toilet.
Yeah, okay.
When we do these cartoony stuff, we want to make sure that we don't see a lot of the typical cartoony stuff. So when she, you know, first jumps off that rock, we see her really I guess right there. You know, we spend a lot of time really stretched out and you can really see it. So in those moments, try not to get too many frames of really cheating and smearing the character. We probably have like we probably can take out a frame or two there. We just kind of see it a little bit too much. So we want to just make sure we feel it. All of these, something for cartoony stuff, all of the cartoony kind of conventions, the smear frames, the multiples, the stretches, those are all utilized and developed to help make these kind of quick, exaggerated, caricatured movements feel better and feel less absurd and unbelievable. So, I think you're doing a lot of good stuff with the cartoony things. Some stuff I've learned from doing a lot of this is cartoony animation is not just, it's not smears and multiples and goofy things. It's about taking a concept and caricaturing it to an extreme that makes it comedic typically. And then in order to get those outlandish ideas that you just created to work, we end up having to do some of these smears and multiples and that cartoony stuff we think of. So continue to, when doing these cartoony stuff, and this for you and everyone else, first, when doing a cartoony shot, think of how can I cartoonify my ideas? And it'll land you in something that is really much more, has more depth to it. But
Scott, can I ask a question? Because I actually don't know, and I'm wondering something that I'm just saying as a viewer. I was just in this shot was a little confusing for me because it felt like you were jumping from two different ideas almost. What I mean by I saw this character, then I thought you were going to be going to a whole new animation, but it seems that they are they are connected, but this to me was a jarring cut from here to here. So like here we have you have a cockroach and they get squished, and then you jump to here and it feels, I don't know if you jumped so far, but it doesn't feel continuous. It feels like a little bit later, like cool, I killed it, and then he's way over here. And then I saw, when I was watching the first time, I didn't see the bug go in his mouth. I'm just saying I didn't. And then I saw the bug come out of his mouth, like, oh, he ate it. And I had to rewatch it. So how could you help? What would you recommend to make sure that kind of gag is clear, that it went in his mouth? I didn't notice it the first time until I was like, oh, he ate the bug. When did that happen? I missed it. I mean, maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but
and that's something we have to take in consideration. People kind of not 100% looking exactly where we want them to. But yeah, as far as like the cut, I would we want to make sure that they aren't two separate shots, and if they are supposed to be the same shot, we'll want to edit in a way that you would probably just stay in this camera angle. You probably wouldn't switch over. If it is the continuation of the story. But if this is a kind of a separate shot, I think either putting a shot in between them that's different, or just cutting to black for half a second and then cutting to that next one. Because sometimes we do animate the same character in similar environments and it can have that jump cut feel. So just make sure there's a distinction if that's the case. If not, I would try and just stay in this shot, this camera here. Because I don't think you would need to cut.
I like this camera angle. I'm saying if I was doing this, tell me if I'm wrong, Scott. What I would do is I would have this shot, have him stand up, and you could have the whole action happening over here. Like have him hop back up. Like you have him back here, you could have him hop back over here closer and do that whole gag where it feels continuous. Like, oh cool, I killed it, good. And then the whole gag of it going in his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, he can just stand up where he's at, and if he's too tall, you can just adjust the camera, have it move up. That's totally fine. As far as addressing kind of that idea of like we're kind of potentially missing the fly coming in or the bug coming into his mouth. A couple things you can do is one, when you have solutions like that or issues like that, think of how can the solution enhance the animation. So one, when it does kind of come around his shoulder and come up and into his mouth, if we go out in silhouette, because right now it comes up like straight. If we go out in silhouette right before it comes in, that's going to help with some clarity, because we're going to see this black dot out and then come towards him. So another thing you could potentially do, since we're doing cartoony stuff, if you really want to sell that that's in his mouth, you could even do a thing where it comes up flies into his mouth, and you get that classic, you know, Looney Tunes thing where like you see the back of the character's head or the cheek push out as it, flies into the mouth. So now we've really adjusted to an extreme weird thing that's going to say, hey, look here, this is different. And you go, oh, I saw a bug, and then his mouth is changed in a weird way. You'll go, okay, you know, 1 and 1 is 2. So
yeah, and I know you want to do the whole body gag, but I mean, I almost would want to see a jump cut right to his face, you know, it going into his mouth, like almost silhouette sideways, you know, profile or something. But I know you want this really funny gag at the end where it comes out. That's really funny. Really, really, this person has really fun ideas. Jesus, you have some funny ideas. It's great.
Yeah.
In terms of anything else, would you? Like, how could you make this reel stronger, Scott? Like, what would
I
think take out?
I think for me, I don't know if I would take it out, but I would just make adjustments. Maybe if you have this shot, going through and taking another pass. And this is something that comes up constantly in class 6, which is our second to last class. When having these characters in their eyebrows, don't forget that we need to push the eyebrows in and out. You know, we need to build that tension and release the tension in that inner part of the eyebrow. Right now, they kind of just are there, and they move up and down, but we're never utilizing too much of the in and out. So, you know, think about, I usually like to think of like here, like they press down, we want to try and push them in. One, they have a tendency to do that naturally, but also she's building tension in the face there. And that's how we're going to see it, by creating those little creases and lines in the face. And that's going to let us know that she has that concern and you know, some tension there inside of her. And then you can relax it out as she opens her eyes up again and stuff. So don't be afraid to go in and utilize that in and out of the inner brows there. So that was kind of something that stood out to me. So it's not even necessarily something I don't think you would take out this shot, because I think it adds some depth potentially to the reel. But I think you could spend a day or two polishing up those things, and it would enhance the shot quite a bit. And also, just as we talked about in our previous reel, you know, she's getting some of the overbent wrist in that first shot, and we're getting kind of the pipe cleaner. It's just folded too much. When she pushes that hand up to her body, it's just a little too sharp of an angle. So we could use some of those bendy controls and just soften that curve so it doesn't look too much like someone took a straw and bent it. But again, just a little bit of polish in there for that. So,
well, yeah. Jesus, I will say, like, one thing I like about your reel is it makes me laugh and it's entertaining. So again, like you're telling stories so fast, which is awesome. Like this person who's so distraught, you think it's about a relationship or something, and then it's about a phone cracking. Yeah, it's great. So
on something on that, I know years ago when they had a 2D intern at Disney, they couldn't decide between a couple demo reels, and the way they decided on which one to take is they said, well, this one person's demo reel made Eric Goldberg laugh, so they went with him. They picked his reel because Eric Goldberg, you know, the supervising animator on Genie, and Phil from Hercules, it made them laugh. And so that's what they picked, because they couldn't decide. They all were great animators, and they're like, well, this one made Eric laugh, so let's go. Let's take it.
I think being entertaining, and entertaining doesn't mean you have to do something that makes you laugh. Like entertaining is when we're like invested in what's on the screen. That's what's entertaining. It could be like a tragedy. Yeah. Like, I know that sounds horrible to say that's entertaining, but it's are you entertaining your audience, you know? So this is fun. I mean, that is, I just love your facial expressions. They're really hilarious.
I think this shot is fun. I think you can go even bigger. Like when she's pulling and the dog's sliding, just go full goofiness and break reality. Like I would, if this was my shot, every time he got pulled, I would have his head just be so loose and floppy that when he gets tugged, his head just is like, like like it just has no control. It's just completely just along for the ride.
That's so
just to
funny.
make it even goofier, and that tongue just being like,
So just this one just needs more push, just to really just really
commit. Yeah, just commit to the
commit to
goofiness
being
of
goofy,
that dog.
like just really push the exaggerated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. So I thought this was a great question. What did they say? Oh, so what do you expect from a 3D animation student applying for a junior role internship? What is the best to show in a reel, considering a student hasn't done many shots yet? So yeah, like if you're like fresh out of AnimSchool or even out of like a brick and mortar, like what should a junior try to include in their reel?
Yeah, I mean, again, like this is not like think the answer that most people want to hear, but just whatever you like, whatever you feel is looking good, put that on your reel, because it depends on the studio too. So if you're looking at like a Disney or a Pixar kind of place, they tell stories and they're very story and performance driven. So they're looking for unique creative acting choices and storytelling choices. So be looking for, those things to showcase in your reel. But if you're, going for a place like Blizzard or, even at Epic Games, like the storytelling aspect of it is important, but they're really looking for, things that are awesome and intense and, mechanically sound and have weight and impact. So it depends on where you're going, but they're just looking for good animation. Their standards for junior and internship are a little lower. They're not expecting perfect polish. They're not expecting, perfection. They're expecting, they want to see an artist. They want to see someone that's bringing creativity to it. So always be trying to add in your own creative touch to your shots. Don't just, animate something that we've seen a million times. I remember when I was in school and just graduated, I would send my work to places like Disney, and they would send back, yeah, it's looking pretty good, but we want someone else. And they would always say, we want unique and specific acting choices. So that's what they're looking for. They're looking for, creative decision making. They're not expecting polish. They're not expecting perfection. They're expecting who is, thinking like an artist.
Yep. So. It's awesome. Okay, we'll do this one. We're going to probably do like one more after this. And again, we had so many submissions. We'll do this more often, you guys, but this was a good experiment. Thanks for like being patient with me as I'm learning this new software. Hopefully it has been like still kind of fun, because I know it's as an audience member, sometimes people are like, my mic isn't working. It can be annoying, but I appreciate your patience, guys. Okay, here we go. We have Callum.
That's it. This way. Tweet. Come on. Tweet.
Pardon me, would you have any gray poupon?
You mean the mustard?
Yes, would you have any?
Would I? Or do I?
Both, actually.
What?
What?
Is this about the mustard again?
Yes, would you have some?
Oh, since you're offering, yes, thank you, I would.
Oh.
Oh no! Whoa! Oh! Whoa! I can't! Oh! Come on, Fly! It's time to be a two-headed monster! Roar! Welcome to the hoopliest, doopliest place on earth! Hooper Duperland! Woohoo! Happy birthday, Milkshake! Happy birthday, Milkshake! Happy birthday, Milkshake!
Okay. Thank you for submitting. So
cool. For me, I like, it looks like we have some stuff from a show, Pop Paper City, I guess. But yeah, I think this stuff is fun, and I like that it's showing that you can like animate stuff that's not normal characters, which can be difficult. I think some of the shots you have later on, like the dog, And these last few personal shots, I just don't think we really need those. I think having your professional work and the dialogue performance you have earlier on is kind of good of what you should kind of put in your reel. I don't think these are adding too much to it, and I think there's some mechanics and stuff issues that I think we're seeing better examples of how you execute those principles with some of the stuff you have here with these funky characters. But because they're funky characters, we want to make sure that we're showcasing some sort of more natural looking standard characters like you have with that dialogue piece, which I think out of all of your personal shots is the most successful. So yeah, that's kind of my advice as far as like the shots you got and what you're doing with your shot selection and things like that. With some just bits of advice looking at especially that personal shot, because I feel that can kind of really showcase what you're doing specifically as an animator with our typical bipedal characters, is I would recommend don't be afraid to just live in a pose. Like, I know we always worry about things hitting a wall and coming to a stop and feeling dead, but we want to find that balance of movement and stillness. So don't be afraid to just hold in a pose and live there. This whole time we've been talking, I've been moving a bit, partially because I can see myself in the camera and I feel like I need to move. But a lot of times we don't really need to move our characters too much, and we can just hold there in a pose for quite some time. So don't be afraid to hold a character still. And on that same note, think also as you're moving a character, don't just think about the spacing and the arcs in these abstract forms. Think about what kind of material your body's made of, the weight of hands, and how do the joints, what is the range of motion of our joints and stuff. Sometimes we get our hands in these shots are getting a little too floppy for what arms and hands might typically do. So keep that in mind. I remember a while ago, I think it was for Toy Story 3 or 4, some of the animation supervisors were talking about how they, or I guess John Lasseter, someone at Pixar was talking about how they loved to make sure they were animating the material that their characters were made out of. They weren't just animating to animate. They were thinking about the weight and the texture and the ability of movement, the range of movement that the different materials that those toys are made of, and making sure they animated that way. That's why Ken would move very stiff and didn't have a lot of like arm bends and stuff. So taking that same concept and applying it to humans, and how does the anatomy move, and how does the weight of the different body parts, and what is their range of motion. Like, I always see hands being bent too much, but we really don't have on side to side that big a range of our hands. So just study. I would recommend studying some live action footage and really paying attention to how the body moves and how it can move, and how can we emulate that in our animation. So
yeah, I really like this reel, but I agree with Scott. I think it would be, if I just saw these shots from your TV show, which are really appealing. Like, again, they're not real humans or anything, but I think they're really fun and really cool. But again, it's more like, what kind of work do you want to be doing? So if you like this, you want to do more of this kind of work, I think this is excellent. But yeah, that's definitely the strongest. So I would probably just keep that in too. And those other ones were probably really important. That's what I think. These were probably really important for you, and you just remember them as being really important, but probably at your level to take them out. What do you think about, like, even this one too, taking this one out too?
Yeah, for me, and maybe it's something you can go in and make adjustments to, but like, it would be just nice to see, and maybe just go in and make some edits to things. It'd be nice to make this more a complete piece. So adding in more sound effects, and some of our editing is a bit funky. Some cuts kind of feel a bit jumpy. So it was kind of things like that more storytelling side of it that took me out of it a bit. Mm-hmm. That And to be honest, if your whole reel didn't have, you know, all these things with all the sound design and the editing well done from up until that point, I probably wouldn't have even noticed. But it's kind of one of those things that you set a standard, so we're trying to maintain it. So it's back to that kind of thing we kind of first talked about, is, you know, just like strip off the stuff that's not feeling as cool and entertaining as the others. So yeah.
So this person's asking about how long, I guess, seconds is Animation Arts demo reel. I'm not exactly sure what Animation Arts is, but is there a time limit to where I think, like you said, there is a point where it does start to feel too long. So
yeah.
Is there like an ideal where you're feeling like it's still like you haven't outworn your welcome?
I think generally the consensus I've seen is no more than 2 minutes. So I'm a bit of a hypocrite because mine's over 2 minutes, but that's kind of 2 minutes is where I try and hit. If you go into 3 minutes, it's like, that's too much. I'm not watching all that. But yeah, I mean, no more, like, try and stay below 2 minutes. If you're like coming out of school, I don't really expect anything above a minute, to be honest. If you're like coming out of AnimSchool or any other school, I don't really expect much more than a minute.
Yeah.
If someone's out of school and they have 30 seconds, I'm like, of course. Like,
that's kind of like expectations of a junior role or fresh out. Like, yeah, you're not going to have a 2 minute, but like once we're seeing some professional reels in here, that's like,
yeah, like, I mean, like if someone came and sent me a reel and they had like worked on 10 films and they had 30 seconds, I'd be like, hold on.
Yeah, like what's going on?
Can I see some of that other stuff? Like,
why are you hiding? Why are you hiding this?
Yeah, what are you hiding?
What are you hiding? So we'll jump right into another one real quick, and this one's another AnimSchool grad. It's Lucas. We'll share this really quick. Thank you for that last one.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay. All right. Whoops. I keep doing it where I keep forgetting to put the sound. So sorry, guys.
Yeah, you gotta click.
I wish it needs to be like permanent. It's making me do it every time. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So okay, here we go. Oh, I have the sound off. That's on me. Sorry, guys. There we go.
I don't want to have any conversations about what a mysterious, inscrutable man I am. I am a Spanish genius.
I deal with the goddamn customers so the engineers don't have to. I have people skills. I am good at dealing with people. Can't you understand that? What the hell is wrong with you people?
Cool. Yeah, I think this really, you definitely have, like, again, setting a consistent standard. I don't feel any of the shots like stood out as being like way better, not as high quality. And so I think things are looking good. You're doing a good job of moving the character. You're definitely not afraid to get some of that organic and fleshiness that we've talked about. I think, you know, we've talked about really diving into the way things are said in dialogue pieces a bit. And I would encourage in potentially future pieces to consider that even further, because there's sometimes like the way they're speaking, it's just, for me, it's not quite feeling like it's really coming from that character. And part of that is you're hitting the emotional beats, but we're missing some of the textural qualities of that audio. And how can we showcase that in our characters, either lip sync or the way they're posed or their movement? So really going in and thinking about the intensity level of volume and texture quality. excuse me, to really sell that the character is performing and saying these things. Yeah, and I like how all these shots, you know, they're not just a character standing in front of some random room. They're involved in the set and things like that. Yeah, I think things are looking pretty good. Just some of that trying to more specificity, because you're specific, but we also want to make sure we're specific to kind of what we're provided through the audio and things like that. There's some moments in the shots that I feel though are really creative. Like I'm enjoying the reel more without the audio, because sometimes the audio, the way the character was speaking, was kind of pulling me in a different direction than what you were showcasing in your animation. So just that's kind of a future thing to keep in mind as you continue to animate and things like that. You know, I like this body mechanic piece. You really told a story, so it feels less like, oh, this is just an exercise to learn mechanics. You're telling a story. So for those of you who are at this mechanics stage in those body mechanics classes, keep that in mind. Like your body mechanics shots can have a little bit more longevity on that reel if you really tell a story with them. So keep that in mind. And yeah, your posing and things like that are looking good too. Just wanting to be a little bit more specific with things. You're being unique, but I think a little bit more specific with our choices would be cool.
Yeah, I really, again, we've been talking a lot about, hey, you know, take out some of these ones we were learning, but I think this is a great example of where you can put one in your reel. Like I think this is 100% worthy of being in your reel because it tells that story and you have a really nice like gag, and I really enjoy this one. I thought it was really entertaining, and I agree. I feel like where you're at right now, is a great reel until you get more work. This is a good, you know, as you're applying for junior roles or you are at a junior role, this is a good a good place to be. But again, like Scott, if they were going to add something, again, you're probably just say, you know, do what you love. But like, you know, like you were saying, some of those points, next time you do that, you know, listen to what Scott said about how can you match the character with the audio. That's really a challenge. That's super hard.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any advice about that? I was thinking about that as you're saying, how do you match a character with a voice?
Because a lot of times we kind of we listen to the audio and then we just sort of go and act it in front of a camera, and we kind of just are doing it, and then we go off our reference. You know, that's sometimes one way of doing it. But for me, I like to sit down and listen to the audio and let the audio kind of inspire some ideas. So I start figuring out, like, I listen to it not just for what they're saying, but I listen to it more like music and go, cool, like, you know, coming off Wish, I did a lot of stuff in the music, the songs. And so I would be listening to how they would sing things. And so if they're like really holding a note out long and it feels like it's growing and building, I'm like, okay, I need my posing and my movement to grow and build. You know, or even just the music that I have in the background, I'm listening to that too. So I remember in one shot, there's no singing in this part. It was like the tail end of a song. They'd stopped singing, but I was animating this thing, and there's this like kind of textural, like kind of quick rhythm that was growing and building with intensity really quick at the end. And so I tried to time and synchronize this like vibration and shake in the character to match that. So then as you're watching and listening, they're kind of doing and saying the same thing. So trying to take a step back and listen to it, not as audio, as dialogue, but as music. And how would you kind of abstractly represent that with movement or posing? And I think that can be a useful part of the process early on in planning.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Lucas, I thought that was really awesome. Thanks for submitting that. And that I thought that was a really cool reel. I really liked it a lot. So it'll be cool to see what you're going forward. I think that was really entertaining. Here's a little bit of a different question for you, Scott.
So as someone who's done this a lot, so yeah, depending on your contract and how long it is, you know, if you just have like a couple month contract, you got to move somewhere, Airbnb is a great solution for those. My process that I have found useful is I like to give myself at least a month of being in that new city to find a place that I'll be relatively happy with. And I've had friends who just, you know, sometimes a company puts you in a hotel for a week or two and they think they can find a place in a week or two. You probably can't. So I like to go, again, use that Airbnb website and find at least a month at a place. For me, I try and find a full apartment, not just a room, but if need be, you can just rent a room from someone. And the great thing about Airbnb is when you go for a week or a month, a lot of times you get discounts, sometimes significantly more. So if you're just looking at places and it's like it's $150, $200 a night, it probably won't be that per night, per day rate if you do a full month. So they tend to be, I want to say, just like 10 to 20% more than your typical rent. Maybe a little bit more depending on the city, but that's my go-to. And then I kind of look, it depends on the city on like what's the best places to look for housing. So, you know, like in LA, I found my place through people at work. So that's a good place to reach out to. Someone at Disney, their neighbor was moving out. And so they're like, hey, my neighbor's moving. But yeah, you know, reach out to people who live in that city and say, hey, what are good apps or websites to go to? Because when I was in Paris, it was very different than how I found a place in New York City. And, you know, in Louisiana, it was incredibly different than any of those places. So definitely reach out to people and say, hey, how did you find your place? And they'll usually give you some tips of what worked well or horror stories of what not to do. But Airbnb is a good way to get yourself some time so you can look at places and not have to rush and just pick something and then 2 months later you're like, wow, I hate this place.
Yeah, that's a great point. Forrest is AnimSchool alumni, so I would recommend, I mean, I don't know where we should put it, maybe it's general chat, definitely like reach out to the AnimSchool community and see, you know, I think that's not a bad idea too, to just like, hey, if you know, if you guys know any place near, we have people all over the world in every kind of major, you know, studio. People are, so, you know, throw that out to the AnimSchool community for us. That's a great question. Yeah. I think this is a great one by Carl. If my professional shots are good enough to get into my reel, but my personal shots look stronger, should I start with my stronger shots when making a reel or show professional experience first?
I say the stronger shots first. You don't go like a full minute before showing that professional work. Maybe put your favorite shot, but try and get that professional work in there just so they go, okay, cool. Like, you know, some like I worked on the Mario film and I didn't have too many great shots in there, but I try and just like throw a little bit in there just so they can go, hey, like I worked on Mario. So yeah.
Oh yeah, that's smart.
Your first shot should be your best because they might not get to the second shot. They might turn it off if it's not as good as what you could do. So make sure your best thing is first.
That goes for any art. You put your best first, and then you put your second, like, and then if you feel like you got them to watch the whole thing, you get your second best at the end. So there's a good, it's a good beginning and end, because those are your, I mean, obviously middle is important, but I think it's like best shot first, second best shot last, and then, you know, try to make the middle as good as you can.
Yeah, sometimes I even just put like first to like best to worst, but maybe like throw in just one good shot that I'm not scared if no one watches it at the end, just so they don't end on the worst thing, just because I don't know if they're going to get to that last shot, but I don't want to leave them with the worst taste in their mouth. So I put like a good shot, but I try and front load because I don't know if they're going to get to the end. A lot of times I'll try and put the like the most unique shot that might get the most comments in interviews. So like for a long time, my last shot was a bull like break dancing and twerking. Then I could know, hey, like I'll know if they watch the whole thing because they'll comment because it's weird. So sometimes I'll do that to see if they're actually getting to the end, because they don't always do. Sometimes it's good that they don't. They just watch the first 2 shots and they go, "This is great. Call them. Let's call them up. We don't need to, we don't need to see anymore."
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll say this too. One of my other roles is marketing, and in marketing, it's good to realize that nobody knows anything and no one knows what's going to work. So what do you feel about making multiple reels, Scott, in terms of like you're applying different places? Do you have different reels to show different? Do you make a reel, or you just have your standard one?
No, I just have one. I'm under the philosophy that if it's good, it's good. The order isn't going to make that big of a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's me being a little lazy and not wanting to have to make a whole bunch. But I just stick to one. And again, I also like the idea of if you keep it to what you feel is what you like, then that job you're going to get, you're going to mesh with. Because I love animation. I love doing it, but that doesn't mean you're going to love working at every studio. So I think it's great to just, of course, if you got to pay the bills, you got to pay the bills and you got to get what you can, then go ahead and tailor. But I always recommend just put what you love and what you think is great. And that company that also loves it, will love it, hire you. And then you'll just be like, we're on the same page. We're gelling, we're vibing, and it's easy. The worst is when you're just not on the same creative page and you're struggling just to figure out what they want. So that's kind of what I like to recommend. But, if you're applying to a place that loves super cartoony stuff and you have a cartoony shot that you're happy with, but it's not normally in your reel, go ahead, throw it in there, give them a little taste of what they like.
Yeah. I mean, we're getting kind of variations on this question, but I don't mind us looking at this one again. What do you expect from a 3D animation student applying for a junior role internship? What is the best to show in your reel, considering a student hasn't done many shots? So you're like, you don't have the 2 minutes. What do you do?
I mean, the thing with animation is that you have to do a bunch of work to get to figure out how animation works and everything. So just whatever your most recent great stuff is. In junior and internships, they have no problem with those, more just body mechanics, not crazy storytelling kind of things. They're okay with that. They're, again, not looking for super crazy polish. I would say just try and come up with shots that showcase you as that you're an artist and you're not just someone that, I found some cool reference of someone climbing a wall and I copied it really well. I think years ago we had someone do that exercise and it was like a Robin Hood, I think, or something like that. I can't remember. But yeah, you just take those basic, exercises that you work on to learn and make them a story, make them fun, make them unique, make them memorable, like what we saw. That was Lucas's reel with the guy on the beach. That's one of our more lower level class assignments, I believe. That's just simple block character, pantomiming, but you make it interesting and appealing and memorable. Then that's what they're gonna lean to. Like, hey, it's not as polished and as we expect for our mid and senior level people, but they're coming up with cool ideas. We can show them how to polish. Yeah. We can give notes to polish, but if you're coming up with cool ideas, then they're gonna watch you.
So here's a good question from Coyote, another AnimSchool alumnus. Hey, Coyote, I love your work so much. I think he's working at Disney. So what?
he was in my class as well.
Yeah, so you know Coyote well. Yeah. So yeah, I'll let you talk to Coyote because he's here.
Hey, so. How's it going? How do you handle shots you don't like but you have to get it done? A couple of things. One, I remind myself if I get this done, I get a new shot and I don't have to do this one anymore. And two, I like to kind of try and focus on like an aspect of it that like whatever is potentially the most fun of it, and focus on that, and try my best not to let it get to me, and just like, okay, let me just get through this one. Let me really like, because a lot of times when you have a shot that you don't like, you're not as excited. So I've noticed when I'm in that situation, those tend to drag on forever. It feels like they never get done because you're not super excited about it. So I try and just go, okay, really listen to the notes, really try and hit the notes, and try and make sure that you're doing exactly what they want and you're paying attention and listening, again, to kind of just get it done with so you can move on to that next shot. But definitely always be looking for the little thing that sparks a bit of inspiration and joy in it, because you know, a lot of times they'll assign you that next shot based on the current shot you did, and if you kind of didn't really do that great a job on it because you weren't that excited, it might affect that next one you get, and then you end up kind of spiraling down. So I always try and like focus on, you know, one beat that might be the most entertaining part of it, or a pose, and just kind of focus on that and really be receptive to the notes and stuff. That's the best I can get for that, because it's always, if you talk to any animator with experience, they deal with that all the time, and everyone's trying to figure out how to get through those grind shots.
Yeah. We're going to take a couple more questions and then we'll have some final words. Again, this was just an experiment. I'm having a great time. Scott is so kind we really appreciate your time, Scott, to have your thoughts and opinions on these reels. I've learned a lot about reels too. So this has been super, super cool. So how do you think as a creative animator, and how and what to observe from the world, people, etc. as an animator? I've talked to you a little bit about this from the sketchbook class, because I know that you go out and sketch people. So can you talk about some of those habits that you've developed to observe the world a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of just something I like to do, is I just like to sit there and like watch people and like, you know, just think about the, you know, different weird things people do and how it's kind of can be silly or interesting or fun. But I think one thing that's great, and I realized this when I would, you know, travel and sketch and paint, is that when you sit down and you have to draw or paint something, you really have to take in all the details and aspects of it to put it down on paper or canvas. And it allows you to actually remember things. Like, you remember the little details, you notice the differences, you notice the nuances, and it makes you realize, you know, how unique and different every little thing is. So like this one here, like if you go back to the kid drinking. So this, I was skiing in the French Alps poorly. I'm from Florida. I don't do well in the mountains. And so I was taking a break. And this kid, you know, if I was just sitting there doing nothing or scrolling on my phone or just watching, I wouldn't really notice. But like I know a whole story about this kid, and sorry for sharing this kid's story, but I don't doubt he'll know. But, you know, he came down and he was drinking a soda and his family was eating. And this was his treat after going down his first like blue mountain or whatever. What do they call them? What is it called in English? What are they called?
I don't know. I'm not a skier. Even though I live in Salt Lake, I have no idea.
Okay. Well, as they said there, his first blue piece. And so it was an award, and he was so excited and had such a fun time. And like, I never would have noticed that. And I just thought it was cute how he was drinking this and stuff. But you really, when you draw it, you have to pay attention more, and you kind of notice these things that people do and stuff a lot more. But just find ways to make the drawing and sketching fun for you. So I always had a hard time with everything has to be perfect and realistic. So I started using these weird colors. So then ultimately it's not realistic. So I would forget about making it look realistic and stuff. So I would just go around and draw people that I would see and stuff. But yeah, I noticed like I remember these moments and this stuff, these people, much more because I drew them. If I just sat there, I wouldn't know what the heck happened years later.
Yeah. I think this is, I also, I went through an animation program, and I'm a big believer. You don't need to be a 3D animator. You do not need to know how to draw, but I think it sure helps. I think like it's not a requirement. There's lots of great animators who don't have, I'm looking at several comments and there's lots of questions about, do you need to be a 2D artist or 2D animator? Like, what are your thoughts on that, Scott?
I don't think you need to at all. Most of my friends, some of the best animators I know don't draw at all. I have found it helpful for me when trying to come up with ideas, plan out posing. It just kind of helps me articulate my ideas, and it developed the skills of kind of, creative decisions as far as composition, posing. It allowed me to develop those skills, in my opinion, quicker because I don't, animating takes forever, but most of these drawings take like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That was one of the supervisors.
Yeah, you got to draw your supervisor like that. That's only fair.
So yeah, that's what I liked about it, was that it allowed me to kind of learn the necessities of animation I can repeat the process quicker and stuff. But yeah.
So, I have to go just to show off. Look at these awesome like pixel art pieces, and they're animated.
Yeah, I animated that one.
So this question: do you guys accept 2D animations for the real submissions? Absolutely. So it doesn't mean that you'll necessarily place higher, because if you are a 2D artist and you don't know how to use the software, which we actually give a free license of Autodesk Maya when you apply to AnimSchool, so you get to use Maya for free while you're there. So it actually helps. What I would say is, if you're a 2D animator, and then once you learn the software, I just know, I've just seen this, I think you're going to have a much easier time later on, because you understand the principles of animation. It doesn't matter if it's 2D or 3D, like the principles, the fundamentals are the same. Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of someone coming from a 2D animation background to 3D? Like what?
I mean, you nailed it. It's the same principles. So you just have to learn the new tool. But yeah, it's all the same.
Yeah, we're gonna end pretty quick here, but I just want to show you a couple little fun things. I just talked with one of our art teachers named Josh Black. He was one of the concept artists and pre-visualization artists on that it's not Harry Potter, it's like Hogwarts, I guess, Hogwarts game. So speaking of, so he's teaching next term. This is like an announcement. So next term, the art class that you guys get for free is going to be a perspective and environment design class from Josh Black, who was one of the pre-visualization artists on the Hogwarts Legacy game. And so just kind of looking through some of his stuff. So if you're interested in that, so we are teaching some 2D skills. He also taught artistic anatomy this last term. So you can go back and watch all previous recordings. So if you didn't get to do that this term, you get to this next term. And then I'm teaching a sketchbook class next term, and I'm going to show you my work and kind of like what I've been teaching. This is actually a demo from my class. So even if you've never painted before digitally, if you're an absolute beginner, like I was showing you earlier, we can get you started. And then we're doing a sketchbook. We're doing a sketchbook challenge. We're going to do 50 sketchbook pages in 10 weeks. And it's something that we do as a whole school. And it's really fun. We're actually going to give away the Art of Spider-Verse for the drawing of those who finish all 50. So it's a really fun community. Again, the deadline for applying is next week. Now I know this is the hardest part is I've got 10 more submissions. We got over 50 submissions of real reviews. And I know that's like really hard if we didn't get to yours. I know that's a bummer. I know it bums me out that we didn't have enough time to go through everyone's. I want to tell you are going to do, and maybe with Scott, maybe with some others, we will review some more. So I have your emails, your submissions. So if you submitted and you didn't get a chance, just like be paying attention. I will remember like who submitted, and we'll give you more preference for next time. So just be aware of that. I'll probably send you an email, if you didn't get a chance, and let you know the next time that we're doing this. So thanks so much for like being here, even if you didn't get yours reviewed. However, this is kind of the way AnimSchool works sometimes, is you can learn a lot. Like the advice that we gave and that Scott gave applies to so many, right? Like Scott, so
yeah, I mean, we talked about the same thing on a couple of them. So
I know, like, we saw some of the same things, even in more like this is not a problem just for like beginners. Like this is a problem, not problem, but every artist, like it's really hard to self-critique. It is. Like I have my portfolio, and I put stuff in there that I probably shouldn't, and I go to mentors or artists that I respect and say, hey, what do you think of this? I think it's always good to get feedback. And AnimSchool has a ton of feedback. I don't know if you know this, but one of the things that makes AnimSchool stand apart is in those 11 weeks, every term, you have, like, Scott would be your instructor, and he would have a lecture day and a critique day. And that's really awesome. That's more than most people get, like to have a like working pro look at your work, give you a critique. However, we also have what's called the general review. We have hired a bunch of animators and 3D modelers who every single day there is a general review, and that's where you can take your shot to a different pro and have it reviewed twice a week. And then if you graduate from AnimSchool, you still have access to general review. So let's say you graduate from AnimSchool, you still can take your reel, you still can take your shot back to AnimSchool and have it reviewed. And that's something that we offer as like a benefit to grads forever. Like you get to keep doing that. The other thing that AnimSchool gives you is access to a lot of cool rigs. You saw them in some of the reel reviews that we saw today. We have all these characters, and we're working on a new show called Mech West, where we're going to release a lot of other rigs and characters to our students. And that just gives you more opportunity to tell more stories with your animation. And we're having a lot of really cool modding going on. We saw Carl today, like, modded his characters, which was really awesome. Like, Carl, I really thought that was awesome that you wanted to have a unique look. You're really kicking butt with that. So super cool to see you modding the characters. Any other thoughts on that, Scott? Like, in terms of the AnimSchool experience that you think is unique or cool?
I mean, for me, the best part is it's laid back, and people, it's all just about whatever people need for wherever they're at. They can find it, and they're provided with that. It's not, it's not stuffy.
Yeah, it's not. No, it's a really fun. We play hard, like we play hard, but we work really hard. Like, people are working really hard. It's not. And the other thing is, people go like, oh, like, how long does it take? Like some of these later shots, some of these later classes, just letting you know, it takes a long time. Animation is slow and hard. Just want to like be realistic with you. Animation is not the easiest thing. Like 3D animation is not the easiest thing. It's very rewarding. So if you do want to consider AnimSchool, you do have to kind of make space for it. It's not like something you can just kind of halfway do. It is definitely a commitment. So just be aware of that. If you were serious about animation, it's great. If you're just like, oh, it's not a hobby school. We are a trade school for people who want to be in the industry. So it's not like, oh, it'd be kind of fun. It's not that kind of place. So just letting you know, like, it's not a hobby school. It's like, I want to work in this profession, And so
I think we usually say, at least up in class 6, at least 20 hours a week should be worked on your shot. And yeah, you have like 10, 11 weeks, and you do one 10 to 15 second shot. So yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah. Walid, let's show this. Walid, sorry, couldn't get to your reel. We hope we can get it to at another time. It's really awesome. I really love your reel. When should I know? Well, I know what you're saying. So how do you know? Like, this is a polishing question. So
yeah. How do you know when you're done polishing?
Yeah. Sorry.
Well, the nice thing when you're working in a studio is your deadline comes and you have to turn it in. But I recommend when you start to feel like I don't know. Like when you have that thought as you're animating, it might not be done, but at least give it a pause, because a lot of times you just watched it too much and you just need a break from it. So I actually encourage my students to, during the break, because we have a 2-week break in between terms, go back to your previous term shot and see if you can polish things up or apply any new concepts you've had to that previous shot, because you've had some time to look away from it and just see what you can do to improve. So sometimes just a break can let you know if, hey, this looks good, or sometimes you get to that point where you're like, I don't know what else to do, and that means you're done. Like, if you don't know what else to do, then there's nothing left to do, and it's time to move on and start a new shot and learn from there again.
Yeah, I think that's a really hard thing. Sometimes we struggle with a piece of art or a shot, and it's like, sometimes the best thing is to go, okay, I'll get it on the next one. Sometimes, especially when you're doing work for yourself. Like, this is not like Coyote's question, which is he's probably doing work for hire, or he's at a studio and he's got to finish a shot. But when you're working on a personal shot, sometimes it's okay to be like, this didn't work. I'm going to start another one, and you're okay. It's just, it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
This is the last question, and then we'll kind of end it here. How do you keep motivated during the spline pass? So for those, and what I'm doing is shot and blocking plus. I'm like all day animating, but when I reach the spline phase, I lose all motivation. Okay, so really quick, for those who are earlier beginner, can you explain those terms really quick? And then,
Yeah. So typically, so usually your blocking and blocking plus will come before spline. So what you do in blocking is you basically, if you have a whole line of animation that's 100, 200 frames, you're going every so often and finding key moments every, sometimes it's on frame 1 and 6 and 8 and 12, and just, that kind of block out your ideas and your performance and the mechanics, and you're not doing every frame yet. And then, and you basically are like snapping between these poses, and then you spline it, and now everything's on 24 frames per second, on ones as we call it, and you have all the animation there to tweak and polish and clean up and stuff. So for me, because I struggled with this, going from blocking to spline, and I was told, I can't remember exactly who, but this was early on, I brought up this question, like, how come my animation looks good in blocking and then it looks terrible in spline, and I don't want to do it, and it's hard and it's difficult? And this guy bluntly comes to me and says, well, it's because you're not doing it right. And I'm like, what do you mean? And basically, I'm assuming that like you're losing that motivation because splining is tedious and time consuming, and usually it looks good in blocking, and you hit spline and you're like, it doesn't look as good as it was looking before. I gotta fix a bunch of stuff. So what I did is I started realizing that if I'm hitting spline and I get demotivated, because I'm not really, it's looking like it's gonna be a lot of work, and et cetera, it means my blocking plus pass either was missing one of two things. It either did not have enough information for the computer, or that information I provided was not as quote unquote correct as it could be, to provide a decent looking spline pass that is manageable and usable and not like blowing up your head because you're like, I don't know what's going on now. So many things are happening. There's actually AnimSchool. I have a whole lecture about this whole process, about blocking plus and how to alleviate the pain of switching over to spline. So yeah, if you go, I think you probably can YouTube search AnimSchool Scott McWhinney blocking, and you'll pull, there's a video that from one of my classes a while ago, talking about this. So that,
was it called what? Do you remember what it's called? I can put it in the chat if you remember.
It was something. I don't know. I don't watch it very often.
Okay, well,
it was, if you just type my name and then blocking AnimSchool, it should come up.
Yeah. Okay.
Or breakdowns. Sorry, breakdowns.
Oh, it's breakdowns. Okay,
yeah.
You'll find that. So
a guide to breakdowns.
A guide to breakdowns. Okay. And
from
then
2 years ago.
This is a real quick question, maybe about health. So maybe how do you take care of yourself? And then we'll end on this one, and then one last thing about AnimSchool.
I don't do anything. I don't do anything to take care of my eyes. I am the worst person to talk about this. I mean, I technically work on my couch and don't have good posture, and I don't really do anything for my eyes. So I would look to others for that. My advice that I give for myself is I listen to my body. I have not come across any sort of pain or discomfort or health issues from working. My only guess as to why I don't have that yet, because most people my age and my experience do, is because I take breaks frequently. Every 45 minutes to an hour, I'm up, not for the sake of trying to like get up and stretch, but just because I'm a sprinter, not a marathon runner when it comes to animating. So I work intensely for 45 minutes to an hour, and then I just get up and I walk around, go talk to someone, and come back. So my guess, take breaks would be my best plan, and of course, continue to see your doctor.
Yeah,
I think would probably be good.
I mean, it's always a good idea to take care of yourself, and I've heard for this is kind of something maybe that you are doing, Scott. You're doing nothing, but I'll say this is actually, if you're working at a computer, you should go on like hikes or places where you have to look at things far away. So that's one of the ways you keep your eyes going, is like just go look at stuff further away.
Yeah, I had a buddy at Illumination. He had one of the eye tests taped on the other side of the room, and I asked him, like, why do you have that? And he's like, oh, just so I can look at something for a little bit that's far away. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mateo, I think he's teaching at AnimSchool now. Mateo,
yeah.
So he's probably a good person to ask these questions, because he knows all this stuff about health and physical health as well. So.
Well, with that, just want to let you know, you still have time. Admission ends for winter term in 5 days. If you want to kind of join this awesome community and get feedback from people like Scott and taught 2D skills for people like me, we're really excited. This is what people don't understand, is that the animation industry is really small. I know people think who aren't in it, oh, it's this big giant thing. You'd be surprised. There isn't some rivalry between studios. Scott's been at all over the place, different awesome major studios, and he's got friends at all of them. It's a really tight-knit community, and it's nice. The animation industry is full of nice people. I'm just saying from my experience, it's full of nice
I agree. I go out into the world and see
nice.
non-animation people. I'm like, you guys aren't as nice.
I know. Yeah. They're nice. I'm saying that as someone who studied illustration and switched to an animation emphasis. I just animators are just so cool, and I feel like that friendship and encouragement is alive and well at AnimSchool. We really, it's not so much competitive. We want everyone to do their best, but everybody's trying to help each other do great. And the thing is if you think about a movie or a show, it's very collaborative. You cannot do this on your own. This industry works because artists are working together, and it's very, very rewarding. So if you're considering this as a career, it's very rewarding. It's exciting. Scott, you were talking about this, you do travel and you do move around. So you have to be kind of willing to move with the industry, because it does change a lot. And so
be flexible.
Yeah, be flexible. But yeah, we're excited. And again, if AnimSchool isn't for you, know that we still want to help you out, and we're going to keep putting on these things, and we put out tips all the time on our YouTube channel. So even if you're just going, you know what, I'm going to learn on my own, there are plenty of people, like Scott said, that learn on their own. Maybe you could look at some of our YouTube videos and you get some tips there. But if you want that personal critique and that fast pass to getting your stuff critiqued and getting a reel made, and to have the resources that we offer, which is appealing characters, real-time feedback, give us a look. So yeah. So thanks so much, Scott. That was really fun. Sorry for learning how to do this, but I think it turned out okay. We had a good time. And thanks so much for the comments, guys. And again, I'll be contacting you about your reels if we didn't get it this time. So thanks so much for submitting those. I know how hard it is to put your work out there. So know that we do really care that you submitted, and we're not trying to ignore you. It's just a question